Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be. Join us on a journey of self-discovery, empowerment, and inspiration as we explore the world of leadership and personal growth. In each episode, we will explore the art and science of effective leadership, bringing you insights, stories, and strategies from experts and thought leaders across various industries. And now your host, Dawn Marie Bornhammer, Maisha B. Hoy, and Dr. Sharon H. Porter. Welcome to Leading with Purpose, the podcast that's dedicated to helping you become the leader you aspire to be as you lead, empower, inspire, and achieve. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter, Editor-in-Chief of Vision and Purpose Lifestyle Magazine.
Hi, everyone. I am Maisha Hoy. I am sitting in my office at CGRC, and I want to thank my host and former host for donating to my CGRC Sticks Up campaign.
And I'm Dawn Marie Bornhammer, founder of Mission Inspired Consulting.
Great. And today's guest is someone whose work beautifully blends heart, science, and service. Simone Figueroa is the founder of You Thrive Educational Services, an organization that's dedicated to transforming the way we support student mental health through the lens of mind-body medicine and positive psychology. With a master's degree from Columbia University and a background in both finance and spiritual wellness, Simone's journey is anything but ordinary. She's held leadership roles at the world-renowned Canyon Ranch and is on a mission to help the next generation not just survive college, but truly thrive. Simone, we want to welcome you to Leading with Purpose podcast.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here today and to have this exciting and engaging conversation.
Absolutely. And I've got to start at the very beginning. Can you tell us what drew you to study both finance and spirituality in your undergrad studies?
Absolutely. So I'll try to give the medium length version because I could talk about this all day long. But basically, I grew up in a household that really embedded mindfulness. I kind of watched my parents meditating and really, teaching us these principles, but they never thrust it upon us. And they allowed my sister and I to kind of come to this journey, if we so chose, on our own. I've always been good with numbers, and I wanted to pursue something that I thought was going to be fulfilling and something that I was maybe naturally good at, which led me to pursue my finance degree at the University of Florida. Go Gators. But I'm very, hey, we just won the basketball March Madness.
I know. Congratulations.
Shout out there. But I really very quickly in my undergraduate studies started to struggle with my mental health. It really hit me over the head like a ton of bricks. From the outside looking in, I was thriving academically. I made friends. My family was happy and healthy, but I just was really, really struggling with this transition. And it wasn't until my junior year in college, I stumbled upon a credit-bearing course in mindfulness, and it completely changed my life, how I related to myself, how I managed my stress. And I remember thinking, wow, I wish I learned these skills earlier in my academic journey. I feel like it would have saved me so much struggle and strife. And from that moment on, I sought out any and every course that I could take related to that field. At the time, I don't know if things have changed, but University of Florida, there were 3 courses you could take. So it was one short of being eligible for minor. So I was able to receive a certificate in spirituality and health. And I really realized that is where my true passion lied, is within that field. And so that's kind of how I married the two in my undergraduate degree.
I really absolutely love that because mindfulness, I was not introduced till an adult, and I'm talking like a few years ago. And just thinking all the way back through my college days, what if I had something like this? Because I really, for me, went through it my first 2 years. I stayed home and didn't want to be home. But it ended up being a great thing. But I was really in a place my freshman and sophomore year because I had to stay home financially and go to school in my hometown. It was not good mentally for me. It turned out to be good, but just, to think all the things that I went through the first 2 years, this would have been so helpful. So I absolutely love that. Thank you for the courage to fill the gap.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting. I don't even know where to start with my questions. So I'm going to take it to conversations I've had this past week that when I saw who we were talking to, I was like, oh, this is so exciting because my son is a 20-year-old. He's of the COVID generation. And I'm wondering your thoughts on these COVID kids who are like this all day on their phones, who are not where they're supposed to be. And I hate when I say that, but what's your thoughts on the COVID generation and the phones and the technology and what's going on today in this world? And give us parents of 20-year-olds some advice on how we deal with this generation of kids, students.
Absolutely. And with the full disclaimer that I am not an expert, this is completely my opinion on the situation, but I feel like phones and social media has obviously played a tremendous role in some of the mental health issues that we're seeing with our youth. But I think it's also really easy to place the blame fully on that when we really peel back the onion and look deeper. I think the bigger issue is this sense of belonging and wanting to feel this connection that the phone obviously serves as a barrier. I feel like kids, especially those where unfortunately a lot of their emotional development was stunted by the fact that they were in isolation, they were alone. And yes, we were in this world where, social media and the communication back and forth and the texting and the Snapchat and all of those things like was already a factor. But I feel like what really happened is this lack of in-person connections really kind of helped and hurt students from being able to form those in-person connections. And so I feel like, with respect to what a potential solution is, it's really trying to connect with our children on a really deep level, ourselves, right? And using that as an opportunity to really get to know them, to get to know what their interests are, to spend quality time together, as hard as it is to try to get them away from their devices and their phones. And these things have been, really geared towards obviously the dopamine hits and trying to keep people engaged, but really doing our part to try to find a way to connect with them on this deep level that then by doing that, hopefully it could infuse into their relationships with their peers and to really start to teach them how to kind of come back together in person, and not rely as much on the phones and the connections there.
No, and I'm not saying that you're right because you're an expert and that's how I've always felt. But I do feel like, they had to rely on technology to get through COVID, right? That's where they created those connections because they were not talking to their kids, their friends or their students. And it's interesting because I'm like, okay, I'm trying to build that relationship back, right? Let's go out to lunch. Let's go out for a walk. Let's do those things that you said, create connections with me and my son. So I do appreciate the answer. And I do appreciate that you're taking this on, as Dr. Sharon said, you're filling this gap because I do think it's a true need for these students to get that mind, body, spiritual connection that they've been missing for the last few years.
So I want to talk a little bit about the very people that helped you from the time that you had this awakening, this decision that you wanted to solve for something that you were experiencing, and the creation of your business. And so can you talk to us a little bit about any mentors or any individuals that showed up in your experience from that point that you had that mindfulness class all the way through the inception of the creation of your business?
Absolutely. The list goes on. I would not be where I am today without the guidance and support of so many mentors that I feel like came into my life at just the right time where I needed it the most. Starting with my dad, to be honest, when I started to develop this passion for spirituality and health and really wanting to explore that beyond just my own personal identity and passion in my own life, I had received a job offer, a very lucrative job offer from JP Morgan. At the time, this was my dream job offer. And I did a summer analyst position, and I received a job offer. And I just knew in my heart that this is not what I wanted to be doing, but I was going to kind of keep going. It was a really good job. It was going to provide a really nice level of income coming out of college. And I was having a conversation with my dad, and he said, if you could do anything in the world and money wasn't an object, like what would that be? And at the time, I was like, I'd want to, start my own health and wellness, resort or, center. That's actually the word I use, center. And so he really encouraged me to start looking at other job opportunities that maybe would be more passionate and more fulfilling for me versus just doing something that was no longer filling that bucket. And so I then started doing research, and I stumbled upon the email address of the founder of Canyon Ranch. It was the first health and wellness resort in the world. And I found his email address on the third or fourth page of Google on a reference letter. And I reached out to him and I just said, hey, I want to get into this industry. I'm a senior in college. Do you have any advice on how I could, get my foot in the door? And I got an immediate email reply back, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is so exciting!" But it was an auto reply saying, "I no longer use this email address," but it gave me the new email address of this individual, and I reached out, and within days, I heard back, and we got to talking, and he asked me, "What do you mean by this desire of yours to come?" Which I shared in my initial outreach, to combining your spiritual nature with your entrepreneurial ways and your business background. And I shared more about what I meant, and he invited me to come out to Tucson, Arizona, which is where I currently live, and that's why I moved to Tucson. And I went to the resort and got to meet with a lot of people and asked people how they got started in the industry. And I basically said, this is where I want to be. Please let me come and work here. I will do any job that you will give me. And I started out as an intern and worked my way up there. And through that process, he was my greatest mentor and role model, teaching me how to be a compassionate leader, how to really infuse your heart in everything that you're doing, in your conversations with individuals, and setting up stellar customer service for guests. And then from that, this is taking you down my whole journey here. So hopefully that's okay. But from there, I just kind of had this pull that I wanted to go back and continue my education. And I went to, I don't even know why, but I met the director of my program at my master's program at Columbia. She was coming to lead a conference at Canyon Ranch, and I met her there. And she said, hey, if you ever want to, come and learn more about spirituality and the intersection with science and mind-body medicine, I have this program at Columbia and you should apply. And I applied and I got accepted. And it was through my master's program that I took a course in positive psychology. And I became very fascinated with the subfield of positive education. This is a full circle moment here. And I was researching and reading about all of the college students who were struggling with their mental health. And at the time, there wasn't much that was being done to support college students with their mental health. A lot of the efforts were being geared towards K through 12, which I'll shout it from the rooftops. I think social emotional learning education needs to be implemented immediately from kindergarten or even earlier. But at the time, I couldn't really find much support being done for college students. And this obviously was very near and dear to my heart because the struggles that I had in undergraduate school with my mental health. And I approached my professor and I said, hey, I want to do more than just research this for my thesis. I think there's really something here. I don't even know how or where to begin, but would you want to partner with me in some way of trying to bring proactive mental and emotional wellness skills to college students? And he said, Simone, I think this is a fantastic idea. Not my wheelhouse, not my area of passion, but I have just the two individuals that I think you should meet, my good friends and colleagues over at NYU, Dr. Alan Schlechter and Dan Lerner. They teach the most popular elective there, the science of happiness. And I think that the two of you would really hit it off. The three of you, I should say, would really hit it off. And we connected and obviously had a shared mission and vision and passion. And that is how You Thrive started. So that is my journey from college all the way through the inception of the business. I didn't even touch upon all the people that have impacted me since the business has been made, but I've been very, very fortunate to have had a lot of incredible mentors along the way, really helping to guide and shape the direction that my career ultimately took, because it's definitely not the direction I thought.
Well, thank you for taking us on that journey, because it's such a beautiful unfolding from the moment that you realized you did not want to accept the very job you were being trained for and took a chance to take a pivot. And that pivot permission slip was given to you by your dad, right, through that meaningful conversation. And then you traveled on to follow the next right mentor, next right person who showed up in your experience that could guide you towards possibility. And so, again, I think it was mentioned earlier, but even just the courage to try the next right thing and to follow that intuition all the way through is really what brought you to be the founder of You Thrive Educational Services, which is just such a beautiful journey to hear. So thank you for taking us on that trip with you.
Of course. Thanks, Dawn.
But Simone, your time at Columbia University, that seems to have been a turning point. Can you talk about how that practical and positive psychology, and you shared a lot of it, but that positive psychology is what's really turning my wheels, and it really sparked the whole idea, which you just explained. But what was it about the positive psychology?
Yeah, that was also really new to me as well through my studies. Again, I had been introduced to mindfulness in my undergraduate studies, but positive psychology, if we think about a continuum, right? And oftentimes traditional psychology is really focused on helping get an individual back to baseline, helping them just really just kind of coast and deal with and cope with maybe perhaps what it is that they're going through in life, which are clearly skills that we could all benefit from. We all are going to be faced with challenges. But positive psychology is really about getting an individual from baseline into the thriving zone. It's it's the additive things. It's how can we live a life with purpose, with meaning, with joy. So it that really spoke to me about how do we then take it one step further and infuse those types of skills, these heart-based skills, into an academic environment. How do we teach about well-being, and how does that play into when we look at an entire student and their success? Oftentimes we're viewing it from an academic standpoint, but in order for them to thrive academically, we need to really focus on all of those other areas. How are they doing socially? How are they doing emotionally? What is their well-being like? What is their sleep like, their nutrition? It's such a more holistic view, and positive psychology really was my first kind of entry point into really viewing it from this more macro standpoint of supporting students and their well-being and giving them these skills and tools to deal with the challenges that they're going to face, but also to thrive, right? As we like to say, not just survive, but thrive.
I really, really, truly love that. And when you see a student going from just surviving to thriving, that has to be everything to your being. I mean, just, and, you know, I don't know the magnitude of where you actually come in. Like, do they seek your assistance? Are you just on the campus? Like, how do they connect and, you know, realize that there is a service out there for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we've really been focused on curricular and co-curricular solutions. So, partnering with higher education institutions to basically disseminate this content in the places and spaces that they currently occupy. That's something that Dawn's really worked with me on channeling that language of meeting students where they are. And so today we've really focused on trying to embed our curriculum into existing courses. So where students, especially first year courses, where we know that this is the most challenging time for students. They're often away on their own for the very first time. They have more responsibilities. Maybe they're juggling a job and working and trying to make new friends. And so really trying to give them these skills as early as possible. And also by providing them with a space through workshops for them to come as a group and learn from their peers and connect and create that sense of belonging for them to hear, hey, I'm not the only one who is struggling, and hearing maybe how one of their peers is dealing with a situation, or just to really just recognize that college is hard
Yeah.
and all of it's hard and that you're not going through it alone. And so
Yeah.
that's really what we've been focusing on, is trying to give these skills to students before the crisis happens, before they actually get to a point where they've really snowballed in from
Yeah.
these small rocks into these big boulders, and meeting students where they are.
I love it. College is hard. Life is hard. And I don't know the backstory of how you and Dawn connected, but I feel like I'm talking to Dawn. This is your human, Dawn. I just have to say that definitely. Thank you.
My question, because I was concerned, but first let me say, I thought you made up the term positive psychology. I never, it seems like a no-brainer. You call it positive psychology, but thank you for clarifying the definition of it. And Dr. Sharon did ask a lot of the questions, but I wanted to get into maybe the barriers why students don't accept this, or a story where a student, give us a story where a student was like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? And the result was they're thriving. They found their purpose. They did the things that you said will happen from using positive psychology.
Absolutely. So I think this is something that we've continued to, it's continued to be a challenge in the sense that oftentimes when students are overwhelmed, the very thing that could help them, it's adding one more thing to their list of things to do, right? Like, I should watch this video, I should read this book, I should do this, but I could also, sit and watch Netflix or do X, Y, and Z, or I'm too busy because I'm studying and I'm managing a job and my friends, etc. Which is why we have really tried to focus on bringing this to students without them having to seek it out on their own. And I know that sometimes when it is being offered in that way, when this is something that's being integrated into a class that a student didn't sign up for, right? Like, why is this being integrated into my chemistry class, or why is this being integrated into something, I didn't necessarily want to learn these skills. And look, at the end of the day, when we're teaching these skills, we try to teach as wide of a variety of skills as possible, because we're all human beings, and what resonates with one person isn't going to resonate with the next. And we're not trying to teach these blanket skills that are going to work for everybody. It's really about building your toolkit. And so the hope is that we're going to share maybe one or two or three tidbits of information that you can recall back and rely on during times of need. And so one thing that really sticks out is that one of our key contributors, so a lot of what we share can also be done via video content through these key experts that we partnered with to disseminate this information and teach these skills in an engaging way. And we have a key contributor named Corey Mascara. He's a very relatable individual. He's a mindfulness expert, and he teaches this exercise, which oftentimes, he shares that students say, like, this seems really silly. It's about like petting your hand, but it's really about, it's called Take 5. And it's a very quick way to get grounded in your body when you're really flustered in your head or before taking an exam, that all you need to do is trace your hand going up the finger on the inhale and down one finger on the exhale, and doing that 5 times, tracing your whole hand. So it's like petting your fingers, as he says, but it really is a very quick way to get into your body when you're feeling stressed and anxious. And we have heard from students that a simple skill like that they can do before an exam, maybe before a difficult conversation with a roommate, has been really, really helpful as a way to just get back in their body and out of their mind.
That is, so it's so funny when you said they get overwhelmed, because having them do something is adding one more task to their plate. And I'm thinking, how am I going to share those with my son without him saying, Mom, stop bugging me, trying to help. But I do appreciate the little things that you said. Like, I'm doing the 5, whatever you just called it, right now, because at this moment I feel very, very stressed, very, very stressed. But that helped me calm and center. So keep doing that work. And I hope to get you on my son's college campus at some point, because they are all struggling as far as I know, all struggling.
My question is actually an extension of that conversation, which is, I can imagine when we have a full plate, right, as entrepreneurs or as college students, as business owners, whatever the case may be, that when you think about the next right thing to do, or when you think about adding one more thing to your plate, there's a certain amount of weight that comes with that idea, right? So then we put ourselves into a swirl of like, well, when I have this, then I'll do that, right? When I have more time, then I will do this. When I have more money, then I will try this. And getting caught up in the when then often causes some decision paralysis, right? It causes us to not make a choice. As a founder of a business, as an entrepreneur, I would love to hear what your thoughts are about leading yourself and teams through making decisions as it relates to maybe choosing something that you need to make space for or time for in order to be in a better mental wellness space to handle the next right thing that's coming.
That's a really, really great question, Dawn. I feel like something that I'm working through and learning and navigating, still to this day. I think really it takes a certain level of discernment and pausing before acting, and really trying to, especially as in our particular instance, being a startup, I feel like it's very easy to want to pivot quickly and jump to the next thing and really just kind of go, 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 right? And I think it's really important to take a step back and pause and really assess, does this align with the mission of the organization? Is this something that's going to propel us forward? And there's so many decisions that we could make. And as you mentioned, decision paralysis is something that comes up all the time. And I feel like it's using this discernment to balance and juggle whether or not taking that step is going to help to further your cause and your mission, or if it's something that is going to maybe just add a layer of complication, or if you're hastily like jumping into it. I'm not sure if that answered your question or provided insight, but I feel like that's kind of what came off the cuff and came to mind for me.
Yeah, I think the reflection of discernment is important, right? And then returning to your goals. So thinking about what is your goal and will this move something that you're working towards go forward? I think the presence of your mindfulness training shows up in your response, in that creating spaciousness to pause brings about the clarity that you're seeking. And sometimes we are moving so quickly that we are not necessarily taking the time to use discernment or to link back to the primary objectives. And oftentimes that's where the businesses will kind of run off course a little bit. And then you have a hard time getting back on track if, in fact, you don't take that spaciousness. And so I think I saw a meme recently that said, if you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, you need to meditate for an hour.
Yes.
Because you can't find the time, then you need to evaluate why you can't find the time, right? And it's about creating time for the most important things. And so, which includes discernment, right? And trusting that you just make the next right choice and then decide where you go from there. And the entrepreneurial journey is certainly not for the faint of heart. I think we can all attest to that here. So thank you.
So, Simone, how do you see education evolving when it comes to integrating emotional and mental wellness into the curriculum?
Well, I think we've made a lot of progress. This is absolutely something that people are aware of, are seeking, are looking for, but I think it still is in its infancy. I think right now, we're really still trying to put out fires, and stop crises from happening. And oftentimes we need to attend to those things before we could focus about the adding in, and putting these things in, even though they're hopefully the things that are going to stop the bleeding before it even starts, if that makes sense. So I feel like this is a movement that is not going anywhere. Again, I think there are definitely education in general, like across the board. I think, as I mentioned, even when I started doing this research and made the decision to go into higher ed, it was because there was more social emotional learning being integrated in the K through 12 space. And that is like the holy grail. That's what I'd love to see, is every student learning this from their first day that they step foot in kindergarten. And I feel like this is becoming so much more of common knowledge and commonplace. But in higher education, I definitely think there is a ways to go. I think people want to do this, but it's also finding the time, especially if it's integrating it into coursework. I think oftentimes these courses are already packed with a lot of information, important information, and things that need to be covered. And so it's kind of figuring out, well, picking and choosing, if we're going to do this, then what is going to go? And it needs to be more of a priority. And there's no fault at all. I think we've been up against a lot, especially since COVID times and the recovery from that and what that means for higher education. And so I think that this is not going anywhere. I think mental health and kids' desire for mental wellness and their ability to articulate that, and they're asking for this. They're literally asking for this. This generation is speaking more about their mental health. When I was in college, this was completely taboo. Seeing a therapist was taboo, and so I think that the combination of there being trailblazers and people that see the benefit, it's going to become even more commonplace, coupled with the fact that students are asking for it, despite the fact that I know we had a whole conversation around oftentimes when they're really overloaded, that this is the last thing they're going to add to their plate. But there are definitely a lot of students, we've made a lot of progress in them wanting this kind of education. So that's why I feel like it's important for us to take the onus on and to really bring it to them to make their life easier. So this isn't one other thing that they're just adding, but it's just part of their normal curriculum.
It absolutely fascinates me. In K-12, we have a saying that you have to man slow before you bloom, meaning that, you have to take care of those basic needs before any academics is going. And so it really just expands to your higher education as well. It does not change. You have to make sure those basic needs are met before you can even expect the academics to be forefront. So again, I applaud you for the work that you're doing for our young people in colleges, because it's very much needed.
I am just sitting here shaking my head, shaking my head, shaking my head, for any number of reasons. One, as an entrepreneur, aligning your vision to help make decisions, but it also because I'm dealing with the K through 12 as well. And unfortunately, by the time our clients get to us, there's sometimes a big behavior issue or this really traumatic stuff that's happened. So I appreciate you saying that some of these students are now like, I know I need to talk to someone. I know I need the self-help. I know I need it. But my question is really about you and your key contributors and how you're implementing positive psychology in your own life, because I know that when you take on the problems of some of these children, of these students, Dawn is an empath, it can really affect your emotional balance. It can really affect your emotional well-being. So how are you implementing for yourself and for your team the method of spirit, mind, spirit, body, mind and spirit, spirituality, and positive psychology?
That's a really great question. I think we always try to share the analogy of you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help someone else. And so really, even with the work that we're helping to do with higher education professionals in training them, it's training them to have their own practice to try to bring some of these skills into their own lives before going out and doing this work with students, because exactly as you mentioned, it could be really, really heavy. And especially for people, like I'm sure all of us here are, empaths and really just wanting to help others and take that on. The greatest way to kind of protect yourself, and I mean that in the most loving way possible, but to really put up a barrier of protection is by having your own practice and staying firm in that and really trying to implement these things so that you can be better prepared and equipped to show up then for the others, whether that's students, whether that's for your own children and your family, right? I feel like that this is applicable to all of us human beings and all of the relationships that we have in life.
I was nodding my head again because that's one of the practices that we try to tell our clinicians and our counselors to put your own oxygen mask on before you go out, because it's very important to protect yourself from, in a positive, loving way, from all the things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So I appreciate that part about you.
So, Simone, many of our listeners are emerging leaders, maybe individuals that have a passion, something that they see out in the world that they want to do something about. And they may be hesitating a little bit, not knowing the next right step to take or how to turn a hobby into a business. What would you say to those individuals that have that calling or that passion on their heart and they're trying to decide what to do next?
That's a great question. I think first and foremost, it's finding somebody that's doing something somewhat similar or even just adjacent and trying to reach out and to learn a little bit more about whatever industry or hobby it is that you're looking to turn into a business, to understand a little bit more about what would it take, what are the steps that need to happen in order to make that leap of faith and actually pursue this. And I think hindsight's always 2020, and as I mentioned, I've had so many amazing mentors along the way and had this vision and this passion to go out and do that. And one of the things that I wish that I even did more is interviewing people on college campuses and really trying to understand the inner workings of higher education before making the full leap of faith to going into that industry, because I feel like it definitely could have saved some turns that we took that maybe were not necessary. Now, I shouldn't say that because I feel like every part of everybody's journey was meant to be, and there are things that you learn along the way. But I think going back to what we were talking about earlier, Dawn, in terms of that discernment and using that judgment, I feel like for anybody that is looking to start something or follow a passion, you definitely want to follow that thread and to jump in. But I would also recommend for sure really trying to understand that industry that you want to move into before taking that first step. Or maybe there's an ability to kind of dip your toe in some way and join, whether it's part-time or whether it's doing it on the sidelines just to know the inner workings of a particular business or an industry that you're looking to move into, to really make sure it's something that you do want to take that leap of faith. And I think there's ways to kind of test it out even before jumping fully in.
I love that. I love the opportunity to learn a little bit more from somebody who's a little further along than you, right? That's why oftentimes many of us hire coaches, right? Somebody that we can see something in or create our personal advisory boards or just find that mentor or sponsor that can help lead us and guide us a little bit to hopefully learn from some of their lessons as we prepare to make our own learnings along the way. So thank you.
Simone, this has been so amazing. We just want to thank you for the time. Thank you for sharing all of your passion, your expertise. And now we would like for you to please share, how can our audience connect with you? How can they follow you? And how can they just find out more about all of the amazing work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this has been such a pleasure, and I'm so grateful and appreciative of the time to have been able to come on and speak with all of you. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get better at using my LinkedIn a little bit more. My name's Simone Figueroa, and if you're interested in learning more about the work that we've been doing with college students, you could check out our website, youthriveeducation.com.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of your contact information. It is absolutely clear that you're not only helping students thrive, but you're helping shape a future where well-being is foundational and not optional. For our listeners, if you want to learn more about You Thrive Educational Services and the incredible work Simone is doing, be sure to check out her social media and her website. Thank you for joining us on the Leading with Purpose podcast today. I am Dr. Sharon H. Porter.
I am Maisha Bihoy.
And I'm Dawn Marie Bornheimer. As you navigate your leadership journey, remember that leading with purpose is not just a philosophy, but a commitment to making a positive impact.
Continue to empower, inspire, and achieve.
And if you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with your network and don't forget to subscribe so you will never miss an opportunity to explore the intersection of leadership and purpose.
Until next time, lead with passion,
lead with a positive intention,
and by all means, continue to lead with purpose. Thank you for joining the Leading with Purpose podcast. Please join us every Monday for a new episode.